We're very happy to have Sochi Azu with us today. Sochi is a communication strategist, storytelling coach, and host of the Lead with Storytelling podcast. He helps mission driven leaders craft compelling, human centered narratives that inspire connection, clarity, and change. With over a decade of experience in branding, communication, and facilitation, Sochi works at the intersection of purpose, audience, and voice. He currently serves as the communications specialist at the St. John Newcomer Center in St. John, New Brunswick. We're excited to have you with us today, Sochi, and over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm really glad to be here today. Can I get thumbs up from everyone to know you're having a good day? Yeah, great, awesome. Uh, this session, this session is all about helping you feel more confident and prepared when it comes to working with the media, whether it's a friendly interview, community spotlight, or one of those unexpected calls that I know I receive late Thursday evenings before work closes. And they can be a nuisance sometimes, but the reality is that you do need to interact respectfully and truthfully with the media at one point or another, and you will get those opportunities or those scenarios where it's required. Now, in your roles, you're not just representing your organizations, you're also shaping how the public understands the important work that you do, the people that you serve, and the impact that you're making. And that's a big responsibility. But the good news is media readiness is a skill, and just like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and improved. Now, today we're going to talk about how media works in Canada and what reporters are actually looking for, how to get clear on your message when time is tight, how to feel steady and grounded in an interview, and how to respond thoughtfully, especially when the topic is complex and sensitive. And we're going to keep it practical, no big or long theory lessons. You'll try a few tools. We've provided a toolkit of key resources that you will use during this session, and that will also come in very handy in your day-to-day work. My goal is simple. By the end of this workshop, you feel more prepared, more confident, and more in control of any media interactions that comes your way. And today I have the honor of having Ethan Okwara. Hi, Ethan. He'll be helping as a co-facilitator during breakouts. And I have Melanie as well. Hi, Melanie. Thank you so much. So they will be helping out during the breakout sessions. And I crave your indulgence. Please, if you have questions while I go through the slides in the course of this workshop, please reserve them till we come back from the breakout sessions, and then we can tackle all the questions, as many questions as possible. Now, we've emphasized that media relations is unavoidable. But what we really need to understand is why it is important for you to interact with the media. There are different scenarios or different scales of risk and sensitivity in terms of context which you'll be required to interact with the media. But what is most important to bear in mind is that every opportunity you have to interact with the media should be seen as an opportunity to share your story. So either in a low risk or low sensitivity scenario, it gives you an opportunity to talk about the good work that you're doing, the importance of the work that you're doing, talk about the people that you are serving. But and as well as in a very high sensitivity scenario, it gives you an opportunity to tell your side of the story. Now, through this workshop, we'll touch on navigate issues or ways to navigate crisis communications, and especially how in ways that also in ways that you can safely and confidently deal with the media while you're navigating those scenarios. Now, but one thing that I must impress is that every opportunity you have to interact with the media is an opportunity for you to stress your strategic advantage, or also known as your story. So don't take it lightly, and please be responsive when you get media requests. Now let's change gears a little, shift gears a little bit. It's important to understand the media landscape in Canada, because you have to understand who you're speaking to and how they operate. This is a huge part of being media ready. Now, I liken this to a scenario where you are maybe invited to dinner with your future father-in-law or mother-in-law or the family. Knowing what they like, knowing who they are is a big part of understanding what kind of jokes or what kind of conversations would be appropriate during dinner conversations. Now, the media in Canada isn't just one thing. It's a mix of public broadcasters like the CBC and Radio-Canada, private networks like the CTV and Global, national newspapers, digital-first publications, and a growing number of independent and multicultural outlets. Each one has its own style, priorities, and audiences and expectations. Now, why does this matter for you as a leader? Because the way a reporter approaches a story is shaped by the outlet they work for, the audience they serve, and the editorial values they operate under. Now, a CBC reporter might focus on public interest and policy implications, while a digital publication might go for a more humane or human interest angle or community-focused angle. Now, when you understand the landscape, you're better able to anticipate what angle a journalist might take and be able to tailor your message to their audience. And overall, you'll be able to stay aligned with your organization's strategic priorities. The goal isn't to spin anything, it's simply to be prepared. So you're meeting the media where they are while staying grounded in your own key messages and values. Now, think of it this way. The media has a job to do, right? And so do you. When you understand the environment they're working in, it becomes much easier to communicate clearly, confidently, and strategically. Now, what do the media expect from you? Truthfulness, I would say the most important here amongst, of all these of these items I've listed, or these values or expectations that I've listed, truthfulness and accountability. They want you to be very truthful, but they also want you to be accountable to your statements, or accountable for your own statements and actions. So look out for these two things as your guidepost when you think about how or what you should be saying, how you should be saying, and what you should be saying to the media. One key tip that I like to give is be very responsive. Be quick to respond to media when they come to you with media requests. Like I said before, they sometimes come with short notice, which is very common, and you should expect that. But whatever the case, try to negotiate deadlines if you need to. But whatever the case, respond to them. Now, a follow-up to that tip is that you have to bear in mind that if you do not respond to the media at all, or you take too long to respond to them, it is seen as silence that could suggest that you are guilty or that you are trying to hide something. And I know that this is not the case, but this is the impression that you give. And I like to say, or it is a common belief that perception is reality. So the way that you are perceived is seen as the reality, or what is true. One thing that is very important, and I like to put this matrix or this table out when I'm talking about media interaction and preparedness for media interactions, is these media requests, these types of media requests. It's important to know the type of media request, because then you are not thrown off when you receive those emails requesting for interviews. This gives you a view of the ways in which the ways in which you could interact, possible ways to interact with the media. And this presents itself or can be seen as your options. So you might have requests to be on a live or recorded interview, questionnaires sent via email, requests or invitations to share a short statement or quotes. It could also be maybe a snippet just or a short quote that they would just like for a soundbite on radio. So these options give you these options give you some leeway to negotiate the format or the means or the means of communication or the interaction that you would be having with the media. Now, in preparing for this interaction, I like, for me, these are more, I've already assimilated these checklists. So for me, my day-to-day as a communication specialist, I run through these checklists automatically. But I'm presenting them to you here as something, and you do have this as well in your worksheets and guidebook that's been provided to you and you must have downloaded by now. Let's take these steps. These steps help us to make a note of the things that we should do while preparing to interact with the media. Now, first of all, I would say the first thing or the most important thing to do is to liaise or collaborate with your communications leadership. The reason this is important is that they help with clarifying the strategy to take. They help in they are most of the times it's their mandate to ensure that these checklists are followed in preparation for any media interview or media interaction. They also help in clarifying messages. So in case you are not a media person, you are not a media professional or communications professional, it is important that you collaborate with them, talk with them, have a chat about what they meet, what the request is when it came in, what might have prompted the media request, give them context, and then work with them through the rest of this checklist in preparation. Firstly, we want to find out what is the topic. What topic is the media or journalist, let's say, asking to speak with you on? What angle are they coming to you or coming into this story or taking this story from? What format are they requesting? Is there any deadline? Can you negotiate the deadline? Is the deadline too short for you to prepare for that interaction? You can always negotiate or try to negotiate. If it is not possible, do you need to pass? Based on sensitivity of the issues, you can make a valid judgment about this on this point. Review your key messages. In talking with your communications team, you begin to craft key messages. I like to say keep like 2 or 3 key messages that you will be returning to, and this is stemming from your values and your mission. Then identify the risks and sensitivities. What are possible trick questions that could be asked during this interview? What's the level of this sensitivity? And the reason why this is important, this evaluation is important, is that it informs the tone of the statement that you will be making. And then finally, practice, rehearse if possible. If you're the designated spokesperson, it's important that you practice your key points, the key messages, so that when you are delivering your statement, you are seen to be competent and it helps you with your confidence. Now, we're doing all this as a first step to building your toolkit. And, first we have these key messages that we should have or that should form your statement when speaking with the journalist. Another thing to note is that in my day-to-day, while preparing maybe a manager or any member of the senior leadership where I work, is I always give them so that, on the table while they are, doing the interviews, whether on on TV or even radio interviews, or even if it's recorded, they usually have, I usually give them two pieces of paper or two sheets of paper, one with key messages and another with data or facts. And they keep these so that they can, kind of jump from page to page and navigate important information that they want to relay, or even the key messages, just to repeat them, rehash if possible, or bridge back when they feel that conversations are beginning to get misdirected. Now, in building your media toolkit, I like to say, one thing that helps with your confidence is speak in simple terms. So this as well applies to your key messages as well. Keep them simple, keep them clean from any jargon or industry jargon. You know the work, you know your work, you know what you do, but the people who are listening to you need to see the human side or be able to relate with what you are saying, the message that you are delivering. And the best way to do this is to use simple sentences, simple words, not one that makes people feel like you have something to hide, or that you are being condescending in your tone. Now, another, and in the toolkit or the resources that have been provided to you, we have bridging statements, and bridging statements. These bridging statements help you to recenter any conversation when it feels like it is being hijacked, or it is or the conversations are taking a turn that you did not intend for it to. Now, in talking about interview techniques, one of the best techniques, or at least the first thing that I like to tell a manager when I'm preparing them for media interaction, is to learn how to breathe. So this moment you are listening to me, you would try and notice how you are breathing. You are breathing quite evenly and smoothly, without any sense or any sign of, sorry, any hint of hyperventilation. And that is because you are relaxed, you are in your comfort zone. But when you are thrown into, or you're in the hot seat, and yes, it is a hot seat, when you are thrown into a high pressure situation, you find that your breathing alters. This is a normal human reaction. However, you need to take control of your body. You need to take control of your breathing in that instance. And it is very important, because when your breathing is altered, you begin to, if you're not hyperventilating in an extreme case, you begin to either speak too fast, speak too slow, or stutter. And this gives the wrong message. It either gives the message that you are incompetent, you are not taking the issue seriously, or that you have no clue at all, or even maybe even hiding something, in a case where you should be truthful or open or transparent about that matter. Now, another key message here, besides the points around body language, that I would like to stress, is never repeat negative language. Now, in this applies to your statements. Always screen your statements for negative language. Do not repeat them, even if they are told to you. Do not repeat negative language. Now, a case study that I like to mention, bring up in discussions around negative language, is the case of President Bill Clinton, who during an interview about his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky, and he said in his statement that I quote, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." Now, what is obvious, and this, of course, had attracted some backlash from feminists all over the world, about how he, dehumanized or degraded or diminished the subject here. But what I want to stress is how he was very particular, he was very intentional in not repeating certain words in his statements that would suggest that he was guilty of them. or at least not wittingly or wittingly or unwittingly. And this is also a common practice even with corporates where they intentionally do not repeat the names of their competitors in statements, except when they are ready to spend billions on adverts bashing their competition. The art of bridging is one tool that is easily abused, but it is widely used by political strategists, by communicators and PR professionals. Bridging is what experts use to stay focused on their message, even when the question or the questions go in unexpected directions. It's a technique that allows you to respectfully acknowledge a question and then guide the conversation back to what you need to say. But what is bridging exactly? At its core, bridging is about maintaining control. It means taking a reporter's question, whether it's difficult, off topic, or too narrow, and connecting it back to your key messages in a natural, credible way. You've probably seen people do this really well on television. They're asked something challenging, and instead of getting defensive or giving a long, complicated answer, they respond with something like, that's an important issue, and what's important for people to know is. So you probably heard something like that. Or another one is, I understand the concern. What we're focused on right now is. Now, that's bridging for you. Now, they acknowledge the question, and this is what I want you to pick from the instances that I've just given. They acknowledge the question, but they don't let that question dictate the narrative. So why does this matter for you as leaders? Because media interviews aren't tests. You're not being graded or on how directly you answer every question. Your responsibility is to provide clear, accurate information while ensuring the public understands your organization's priorities and values. Bridging keeps you aligned with your message, even when the conversation shifts. The good news is that bridging is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned and practiced. Now, there are three things that you should look, you need as a leader. First is clarity. Know your one to three messages, your key messages, know them well. And this is why I always emphasize, leaders must always practice their key messages before media interaction. Composure. So we talked about breathing, we talked about body language, we talked about being intentional about keeping negative language out of your statements. And lastly, confidence. And thankfully, this kind of workshop that we're having is one that should boost your confidence in how in when you're dealing with the media or any journalist. Now, I already shared, we have like 10 bridging statements in your worksheet, and I hope you had time to go over them because in the scenarios that we'll be looking at, I hope that you will find use for them. Now, here I have one of those common things that you hear when you have leaders talking to journalists to comment or not to comment. I hope that I can do justice to the times when you may comment by just focusing more on when you shouldn't comment. Now, I had a case with a client once. They had something happened at one of their functions, and it resulted to police investigation. However, the incident had happened, and the media were calling for quotes, were calling for statements. You had people all over, concerned parties who needed or were demanding an official statement from the client. However, they could not comment because if the meat or the thrust of that would normally substantiate the statement that they should or were being demanded to make were supposed to be outcomes of the police investigation. So they could not. Now, this is one of those kind of scenarios where you cannot comment on a matter when it is involved or tied in legal or HR investigations or processes. You cannot comment because again, the thrust of that statement is tied to outcomes from such processes. Another time when you shouldn't comment is when you don't have the facts. And this happens. This is the real world. You don't know all the variables. You don't have all the facts. It is better for you to avoid making comments about those matters if you don't have them. Trust me, the fallout of a leader making statements or based on facts that they don't have can be quite close or can be quite damaging to your brand or to your organization's reputation. And lastly, if it is speculative, and this differs from not having the facts, you can make statements that are deemed as speculative and do have as bad as a bad effect as you making statements based on facts that you don't have. Speculation is you are assuming that this is what is true, or you are assuming that this is what would happen. Don't do that. Avoid questions that push you to make speculative statements. Now, I spoke before that there are different levels of sensitivity in terms of scenarios which you might find yourself as a leader when interacting with the media, from the low risk that can also be defined as the cozy, fuzzy, warm feeling or human interest stories that you may get a request for, to high sensitivity or high risk scenarios, like in cases where you may have, like one of the scenarios that I gave before about a client, where it may be it could be a crisis situation. A crisis situation is high pressure and high risk. That is a spectrum of risk and sensitivity that you find in the real world. Now, how do you navigate such things? I think the most important is for you to stay calm. We spoke about breathing. Stay calm, because you find that in high pressure moments when you are required to make quick decisions, you could make a bad decision at that point that can have really grievous effects or cost to your reputation. So as much as possible as a leader, you need to stay calm. Your subordinates are looking up to you to be calm in those moments, and they will take cue afterwards. Now, in following from that, follow the checklists as well that we've provided, and ensure that you craft your statements that should have empathetic tone, humane tone, but most of all should read as if you own your actions and you own your story. So as much as possible, follow the checklist, carry your communications leadership or team along in crafting strategy that will put your organization in the best light under any circumstance. Now it's time for us to go to the break room, and we will be doing this for another 20 minutes. I have again Ethan and Melanie, who will be helping in facilitating sessions in those groups. I'm going to give you a scenario now that you are going to take with you into those breakout rooms. You are expected to work with the crisis communications worksheet that you've been sent or shared with you. And this worksheet is supposed to help you plan and craft key messages in response to the scenario that will be shared in the next slide. And then you come back to this main room where we will share your feedback, your statements, and then share feedback, and then we'll take questions afterwards. All right. And you'll be expected to pick a spokesperson who will be facing the media in the main room afterwards. So, it's going to be fun. Now, here's the scenario. And don't worry, you in your respective breakout rooms, you will have this in on your screen so that you can follow or pick the details or whatever facts you need to build your statements. A national news outlet has reached out to your organization for a same-day interview request. They are covering a developing story on the impact of recent federal funding changes on immigrant support services in Atlantic Canada. Earlier this morning, IRCC announced updates to its funding priorities for the next fiscal year, which may affect several settlement and employment programs across the region. Your organization, a key service provider for newcomers in Atlantic Canada, has received multiple community inquiries and media requests seeking clarification. The reporter is requesting a statement from your executive director within the next 2 hours to discuss how these changes might impact services for newcomers, refugees, and temporary residents in your area. You are part of the executive communications team preparing for this media interview. Okay, so there you have it.
Ok, je peux aller, moi.
Vas-y, Amina.
Ok. Bonjour tout le monde. Je ne sais pas si moi je me suis pas encore présentée. Moi c'est Amina, je suis la coordinatrice des communications au district scolaire francophone sud en Nouveau-Brunswick, la région de Moncton. Comme on a fait un travail d'équipe, Aurélia et Mélanie et moi, on a pensé que je vais lire ce qu'on a préparé pour ne pas prendre beaucoup de temps. L'IRCC a annoncé aujourd'hui des changements de priorité de financement sur les services de soutien aux immigrants dans les provinces de l'Atlantique. Ces changements pourraient avoir une incidence sur les programmes, mais il est toutefois trop tôt pour confirmer l'étendue des impacts sur nos programmes et services d'établissement. Dans tous les cas, notre organisme demeure engagé à assurer la qualité des services qu'on offre aux nouveaux arrivants. Notre engagement envers la communauté reste inchangé et nous allons poursuivre notre mission avec détermination. Nous adapterons nos services pour répondre aux besoins des nouveaux arrivants. Voilà. On est resté quand même très court là. Et voilà. Merci.
No. It's just fine. I mean, yeah. I wouldn't say the shorter the
Good.
better.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wouldn't say shorter the better, but it's right on point. I mean, it's succinct, sweet. Thank you so much for that. That was really beautiful. But I have a question for you. So we spoke with some of the community
Oui.
members. Yes, I have a question for you. Think of me as a journalist now. I have a question for you. We spoke to some community members and they say that these changes mean that you are going to be providing less quality or fewer settlement services to this community. Do you think that is fair?
Je réponds Aurélia ou bien tu réponds toi? Je continue?
Oui, tu peux répondre si tu veux.
Ok.
Je vais juste continuer par la suite.
Ok. Je dirais que nous allons essayer de maintenir la qualité de nos services et assurer la quantité et voilà, on va dire que on va essayer de maintenir la qualité et même la quantité. Nous nous nous, par exemple, on va évaluer et analyser, qu'on peut pas dire: «Ouais, moi, je préfère ne pas, répondre clairement à cette question», qu'on va rester toujours dans je sais pas si j'ai raison ou pas.
Est-ce qu'il peut reprendre la
Oui, est-ce que
question?
vous pouvez répéter, s'il vous plaît? Parce que là
C'est ça. Est-ce que c'est possible de reprendre la question?
il y a un décalage, hein.
Ouais, c'est ça, il y a un
Amina, I'll repeat the question. Really, if you want, maybe
OK.
take a shot at it. So we've spoken to different community members, different organizations, interest parties, and they say that these changes mean that the quality and quantity of the settlement services you'll be providing in this community is going to reduce. Do you think that is fair?
Non, n'est pas juste parce que je vais pas être, comment vous avez dit tout à l'heure, être négatif ou on peut dire que personne ne va parler à notre place là. Nous n'avons rien déclaré, on n'a rien communiqué comme on va diminuer nos services ou quoi que ce soit. On va maintenir la qualité et la quantité, notre service, tel qu'il est, voilà. Je pense que c'est ça.
Pour rajouter à ce que Amina a dit, on peut aussi dire qu'il est encore un peu trop tôt pour conclure quelque chose. Donc, on ne dit pas réellement que les changements sont trop, va diminuer la qualité de nos services ou la quantité, mais on peut leur dire qu'il est encore trop tôt pour se prononcer là-dessus. Je sais pas, je sais pas.
Okay, all right. So I hope the transcription is will come on time because delivery is important here. So thank you for your statement. Again, it was on point. And I love that. I love that you kept it short because it gave really little room for me to pick something I can, use against you in my news if I'm not on your side. And you always need, not that you need to be defensive, but you need to be very clear with your messaging. Now, here's something, unfortunately, you've told me that it's not fair. So I'm going to go to press. I'm going to go to press and say, Amina, the executive director of this Francophone immigrant settlement services, thinks that it is not fair that the IRCC, see what I'm doing here? I didn't lie. Did I lie? You did say it's not fair. Now, you did better the first time. You did better the first time, which was to say that it is too early for you to say anything, but you will continue to ensure that the quality, and you should have stopped at quality of the services you'll be providing. You will maintain the quality of the services you're providing. The reason why I didn't, in my own estimation of what I think you could have said, I'm not picking quantity is because you cannot guarantee quantity. If the changes, which we don't know what they are, if the changes turn out to be positive, you will get more resources and then you can provide more quantity. But if the changes turn out to be negative, it means you provide less quantity. So for you to say quality and quantity is speculative, and you want to stay away from that. So you can only guarantee quality, meaning that if you are giving $20, you will ensure that you use that $20 in the best way possible to provide the best services. But you cannot guarantee that you will get $200. So don't make speculation as to regards to quantity. You have control over quality. You don't have control over quantity. And as I would take it that we're all in the same industry, in the same space, in the same ecosystem, we know that the extent to which these changes can actually affect settlement services is that people lose jobs when there is a cut in funding. That's the reality. And you can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee anybody's job if that happens, right? So stay away from such statements. The next thing I want to say, which is very important because it ties back to something I emphasized during this workshop, which is staying calm. Aurelia did something which I want you all to take something away from what I'm going to say. Aurelia did something which was to jump in to save the day because you felt there was something that you could have added. Now we're all role playing, so I'm not taking it is fair and okay in this setting, in this space. But in the real world, restrain yourself from jumping in. The only person who has been trained, only person who has been trained and been prepared for this interaction is, in this case, Amina. If you jump in, you might trigger a counter reaction. So restrain yourself from, the best thing you can do is maybe slip a note to Amina with a comment or a caution. That is what you can do. Do not jump in. Because one thing that we didn't cover here is the rule of on the record, off the record. Don't feel that because you are not the person who is not being interviewed, that your comment will not be taken down as a comment. Okay, so I don't dwell too much on that, but always assume that you're on record. Always assume. Forget what the televisions tell you or what your TV shows tell you. You are always on record. Never assume that because if a journalist is friendly, so you think you can just mutter or murmur a word or a statement and it will not go unpicked. Don't do that. Okay, but again, good job with the statement. Stick to your statements. I did something there. I pushed you. In a real world, you are going to be pushed. So you must stay calm even when you are pushed. It is polite to repeat yourself. Even when somebody is trying to digress or change the narrative, it is polite for you to repeat yourself. So don't shy away from it. Use that as a tool. But again, good job. Great statement. It was very succinct. I love it. Well done. Over to you, Ethan.
I'm kind of terrified now that
Did I do that? No? Did I do that? No?
I'm just kidding. That
was my daddy voice.
No, but you make a very good point about, especially that being on the record thing. I did a brief stint as a journalist, and there was a trick. Whenever I was talking to someone and they were tense, I okay, let's talk. I would close my notepad and fold my hand, and they would tell me everything. And assuming, he's not writing anything anymore. So just to keep in mind. Okay.
Let me add to that something to that. Another lesson. Here's another thing. Even your emails. Do not think, because I have been quoted in an email. I thought I was talking to a friend. I have been quoted from an email response where I even put an emoji. That sentence in which I had that emoji that I thought was friendly, it was taken as a statement. I saw it in the newspaper. I could not believe it. So again, never assume you are off record. Always assume you are on record. All right, sorry.
Right.
Yep.
Cool. He's probably talking about me. And on that note, Becky, you're up, our CEO.
Thank you. And I had Jen, Janika, and Julia on my team. So I hope I represent everything that we talked about. We had some great discussions, and here is our prepared statement. We are aware of the announced changes to the settlement funding, and we feel there will be significant impact to our newcomer clients who rely on settlement services. We are committed to continuing to support our clients with settlement services, and we look forward to having discussions with our funders to better understand the impact on our organization and for advocating for the needs of our clients. That's it.
Lovely. I love it. So Sochi, the journalist, wants to ask you a question. Thank you so much, Becky. Yes, that sounds perfect. But you will agree that these IRCC changes reflect a larger problem with the Canadian immigrant system. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
There are certainly a lot of complexities with our immigration system and different views. I would agree on that, yes.
Thank you, Becky. And I'll then close my notes and walk out of the office, buy myself a bagel, and go punch in my system, rushing to make my news cycle before the end of the day, where I say, Becky, executive director, points out complexities, and I will quote all that you said, points out complexities. So you see where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah, that's why I tried to be careful.
A complexity is a negative language. It's in a large extent a negative language you want to stay away from. And do not be quick to agree.
Right.
I pushed you there. I pushed you into a corner you did not expect. It had nothing to do with anything in your statement.
Mm-hmm.
So couple of things. First of all, your statement was pristine. And you need to be careful. You need to also think what on the other side, how do narratives get hijacked? In the real world, it doesn't matter how pristine your statement. And I've seen this happen. The best, some of my clients have the best of intentions in what they do, in what they say. But once you agree to play in a field that is, it's open season for any narrative, it's out of your control. However, anybody reading, anybody with, reading news with, with a critical mind can tell that this is what you said, and this is what is being interpreted. So always when you read news, for all of us, when you read news, there is what is said or what is quoted as a statement by so and so and so, maybe like for instance by Becky, and then there is what the journalist interprets from what you said. There's a distinction, always a distinction. However, your best bet, your best shield is to ensure that your statement is pristine and leave the interpretation for the journalist. Anybody who is reading anything will be, and hopefully it's your hope is that your statement will fall in the hands of a journalist who is tackling a story from a favorable angle. If it is not favorable, and you're looking for your next best situation scenario is that it is neutral. But you will be unfortunate to find your pristine statement being thwarted in an unfavorable narrative. So don't help them do that. Words like complexities and any negative language is just the recipe for that kind of situation that you want to avoid. Okay? Don't be quick to agree. Now, I didn't mention this during the techniques. Something that you do when we're talking about talking slowly, always count 1, 2, 3 before you answer a question. They're just seconds and sometimes even nanoseconds by the time you've built experience over time. But within those nanoseconds or 3 seconds, here's what you are looking to do. You are assessing the question that you have been asked. You are going over the statements that you have prepared, and you are tying and evaluating whether the first impulse that you have in answering that question serves the interest of your organization when you say it. If it doesn't, go back to your key statements. 1, 2, 3. Assess and then respond. Do not be quick to agree. If the person is trying to point you in a narrative point you in the direction of a narrative that is unfavorable or negative, go back to your key message. And it's at this point that you acknowledge the question. That's why you have those bridging examples. Acknowledge the question. You say that's an important question. Thank you for that question. what I would like us to remember is, and then you go back to your key message. Okay? But again, pristine statements, and it will serve you. But please go back to the techniques that we've spoken about in this workshop. At what point can you ask a journalist if you can go off the record or speak off the record?
Never.
Never. sounds like a voice from trauma. From a traumatic. Never. It's just a guttural tone to it. All right. So yes, I would say never. However, my first answer would be, or my short answer is yes. Yeah, you're right, Jenica. Never say, never assume that you are off the record. However, there are unique, and there are very, very few and far between instances where you encounter a journalist who you know and deeply trust. So if you run into Ethan, I can vouch for Ethan, but I don't think you should. You should. I can vouch for Ethan, but I don't think you should. If you know and trust someone deeply, you can do so. However, what you tell that person, ensure that it is to provide context for either your silence or what you are going to say after. It is also possible that before an interview, you can have an agreement. It needs to be you need to agree. Don't assume. If there is something you need to say and you don't want to go on the record, you need to say it. You need to request that the person acknowledges that this is going off the record, or this is going to be said off the record. You need the person to acknowledge verbally or in writing. It's just the ethic of journalistic ethic. They have to, once they do that, they are bound. But never assume, and don't say it and assume that the person has said yes. Nico, how are we doing for time?
We've got another minute if anybody has any questions. You feel free to also, the resources will be shared over the next couple of weeks. You will get a follow-up email probably tomorrow morning with a bit more information. So, if you do have any further questions, you can also just reach out if something pops up. But with that, Sochi, thank you for everything you shared with us today. And thank you, Mélanie and Ethan. Merci à toutes et à tous d'avoir participé et échangé avec nous aussi. Thanks to everybody for attending and engaging with us. The resources, like I mentioned, are recorded webinar as well will be shared next week with everyone in attendance, as well as a brief survey regarding today's session. Les ressources et la vidéo du webinaire seront partagées la semaine prochaine avec toutes les personnes présentes, ainsi qu'un petit sondage sur la séance aujourd'hui. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bonne journée.
Thank you. Merci. Bye.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Thank you.